The less money a household earns, the more they pay for basic life necessities. Economic data reveals a startling paradox where the lack of capital creates a feedback loop of higher expenses, known as the scarcity trap. This phenomenon forces lower-income earners into a cycle where survival costs significantly more than it does for the wealthy. Over the next few minutes, an analysis of the psychological and structural barriers reveals why it is mathematically expensive to be broke. From the bandwidth tax to the Boots theory of economics, the evidence shows that financial stability is often more about timing and access than just hard work. Consider the common grocery store purchase, where buying in bulk offers a lower unit price for those who can afford the upfront cost. A consumer who can afford a $50 pack of toilet paper pays roughly 25 cents per roll, while someone with only $5 is forced to buy a single roll for $1. This is often referred to as the Vimes Boots Theory of socioeconomic unfairness, which illustrates how quality goods save money over time. A high-quality pair of boots costing $100 might last 10 years, while a $10 pair lasts only a few months before needing replacement. Over a decade, the person with less liquid capital spends hundreds of dollars more on the same necessity, yet they still end up with wet feet. This lack of initial capital prevents the poor from making the very investments that would lower their cost of living in the long run. The same principle applies to home appliances and energy efficiency, where older, cheaper models consume significantly more electricity. Studies show that low-income households spend a larger percentage of their income on utilities because they cannot afford the $3,000 upgrade to high-efficiency systems. Data suggests that the energy burden for the bottom quintile of earners is 3 times higher than that of the highest earners. When the entry price for efficiency is too high, the recurring monthly cost becomes a permanent tax on those with the least to lose. But here's where it gets interesting, as the cost isn't just measured in dollars, but in the very way the human brain processes information and makes decisions. Scarcity is not just a financial state, it is a psychological one that consumes a massive amount of mental energy. Harvard and Princeton researchers have identified what they call the bandwidth tax, a phenomenon where the brain is so preoccupied with immediate survival that its processing power for other tasks drops significantly. In a famous study of sugar cane farmers in India, researchers found that the same individuals performed significantly worse on cognitive tests before the harvest, when money was tight compared to after the harvest. The mental strain of poverty was equivalent to a 13-point drop in IQ, or roughly the effect of losing a full night of sleep. When a person is constantly calculating whether they can afford a $5 bus fare, they have less cognitive room for long-term planning or career development. This leads to a state called tunneling, where individuals focus exclusively on immediate crises and ignore long-term consequences or opportunities. Tunneling explains why people in financial distress might make choices that seem irrational to outside observers, such as taking out high-interest loans. They aren't ignoring the math, their brain is simply prioritizing the fire that needs to be put out today over the one that might start next month. Because the prefrontal cortex is overwhelmed, self-control and willpower are depleted more quickly than for those who aren't stressed about basic needs. This creates a physiological barrier to escaping poverty that has nothing to do with character or work ethic and everything to do with biological limits. The data tells a different story once we look at how financial institutions and service providers leverage this lack of bandwidth for profit. For those with low bank balances, the banking system itself becomes a source of recurring costs rather than a tool for growth. Major financial institutions collected over $11 billion in overdraft and non-sufficient funds fees in a single recent year, according to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. A $35 overdraft fee on a $3 coffee represents a 1,000% markup that only affects those who are already struggling. While high-net-worth individuals receive fee waivers and premium perks, those at the bottom pay for the privilege of having a place to store their money. Payday lenders offer another example, with interest rates that can exceed 400% when calculated annually. For a worker who needs $200 to fix a car for their commute, the short-term fix often results in a long-term debt spiral that drains thousands in interest over time. Late fees are another component of the scarcity trap that compounds existing debt exponentially. When a single missed payment on a credit card triggers a $40 late fee plus a penalty interest rate of 29%, the original debt becomes nearly impossible to service. This is the paradox of credit. Those who need it the least are offered the most competitive rates, while those who rely on it for survival are charged the highest premiums. The system is designed to reward stability, but in doing so, it aggressively punishes the lack of it. However, the scarcity trap extends beyond individual banking habits and into the very infrastructure of where people live and work. Physical distance and transportation represent a major hidden cost for low-wage earners who are often priced out of living near urban job centers. Data shows that lower-income households spend nearly 30% of their income on transportation, compared to just 9% for higher-income families. This time poverty is a critical factor in the scarcity trap, as long commutes reduce the hours available for sleep, education, or supplemental income. When a person spends 3 hours a day on a bus, they lose the equivalent of a part-time job's worth of time every single week. Healthcare is another area where scarcity increases long-term costs through the avoidance of preventative maintenance. Without an emergency fund or insurance, individuals often ignore minor medical issues until they become catastrophic emergencies that cost tens of thousands of dollars. The lack of a financial buffer also means these households cannot take advantage of investment opportunities during economic downturns. When the stock market or real estate prices drop, those in the scarcity trap are often forced to sell assets to survive, while those with capital can buy at a discount. This prevents the compounding interest that is the primary driver of wealth creation in modern economies. Instead of their money working for them, these individuals spend their entire lives working for their money, with interest rates always working against them. Understanding these mechanisms is the first step toward recognizing that financial struggle is often a systemic trap rather than a personal failing. The scarcity trap proves that having less money fundamentally changes how the brain functions and how much the world charges for survival. If this changed how you think about the cost of living, the next video breaks down the psychology of the middle-class debt cycle.